back, everyone. I'm Nala.
And I'm Faith.
And this is the Sirens Den breakdown, theories, and things you may have overlooked for episode 4 of Wandavision.
So take this as your official spoiler warning, and let's go into it.
This was a fun filler episode. It wasn't entirely based on a show. It didn't continue on the decade-long timeline. It just kind of gave us a glimpse of the real world, what's happening outside of Westview. And a lot of questions were answered.
Yeah, this is one I've been really excited for. I've been really eager to see what's been happening on the outside and get that side of the story. So this one was really fun.
Well, Faith, break it down for us.
All right. So the episode starts off with Monica Rambeau kind of weirdly coming back together. It's implied that she was one of the ones who disappeared in the blip. She's in a hospital room and she goes into the hospital into a scene that is utter chaos. People are coming back left and right. No one really knows what to do. Everyone is kind of confused and has no context to what's going on. And she's trying to find her mom, who had just successfully had surgery. She's finally able to track down a doctor who's just shocked to see her, who explains that her mom died 3 years ago. She's been gone for 5 years.
This part was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from seeing how it happened in Spider-Man Far From Home, it's like it was seen as like a comedic thing, like, oh, look how funny stuff, rematerialized in such crazy situations. But then you realize that there is another side to this where, wow, some of this was really horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's people coming back having no idea where they are, what happened. It's just chaos all around.
Yeah. And this is something that this is a scene I've been wanting to get out of the Marvel Universe since Endgame. And like you bring up Spider-Man, just me and my partner, we were actually talking before this episode came out. It's just like the Spider-Man stuff was fun and great, but we were really hoping to get more aftermath of the blip because there's so much to think about there. Oh my God. So the fact that we finally did get to see some of the more darker consequences of that, I was so excited.
I like the fact that when she reforms, you hear basically memories of Monica's past, including clips from Captain Marvel with Carol Danvers, which again probably just ties into this being a Spectrum origin story, because she works closely with Captain Marvel as well. So I think there's definitely like a team up in the works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially just because Maria Rambeau is such an important character in Captain Marvel. I still ship her in Captain Marvel. I don't care. That's but
I'm with you.
But just now that we know kind of a lot more about her, we get in later kind of what Maria was doing in the meantime while Captain Marvel's been away and kind of what her legacy on that Marvel universe is a little bit later down the line. But yeah, just to know that this is an important character in this universe who's kind of died off screen. So just I'm really curious to see how they're going to bring that into Marvel if they do.
Then we find out more about the other organization, Sword, that was created by Maria Rambeau.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get more into Monica and like how her life is being changed after the blip.
Yeah, so we get into it's established 3 weeks later. Monica goes back to work at Sword, and we kind of learned that someone else, her colleague, I'm assuming friend, a man named Tyler Hayward, has been named the new director of Sword. We find out that it was through the scene that it was her mom that established Sword in what we said. But we also find out that her mom established a certain policy before she died. And that is if the people who blipped out are ever to return, they cannot go on extraterrestrial missions, which means that Monica is kind of stuck on Earth, stuck on kind of the more home base missions.
I liked how this kind of explained the name change from Sentient World Observation to Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Division.
Mm-hmm.
That, it makes sense that, in lieu of all things, their priorities have kind of shifted, and he kind of dropped some Easter eggs talking about them working with nanotechnology and them developing more things that could be, there's just like a lot of references to things that they can potentially start bringing in. I mean, the Weapon X program was obviously man made, so that could be something they're hinting at. They can be hinting at Fantastic Four. It was just really cool going through another compound and seeing, the different side to these government agencies.
Yeah. It's also kind of funny that we're going into Sword now because one of the big parts of the previous Marvel Cinematic Universe, which Marvel seems to be ignoring and pretending never happened, before all this was Shield, right? So I do kind of get a kick out of that. We went from Shield to Sword. It's a new thing. It's a new era. It's Sword, not Shield, but they do the same thing essentially. But
I'd
yeah,
like to see the softball match between the Shield agents and the Sword agents.
I really hope we get that at some point. That I want that movie. I want that sports movie. So, Monica is assigned to go help the FBI with a missing persons case out in New Jersey. She arrives and meets up with our boy, FBI agent Jimmy Woo, and our boy tells her that he has a witness in the witness protection program who stopped responding to him and he hasn't been able to contact him. And when he went to go and, or them, we don't know who this agent is or who this person in witness protection is. But when he went to go check it out, all the authorities of the place are like, Westview doesn't exist. That's not a real place. And furthermore, whenever he's tried to contact anyone who knows anyone in Westview, they also have no idea. No one seems to know about Westview as a place. They kind of have a selective amnesia there. We kind of get into it. She brings out a drone to kind of investigate the town. The drone absolutely disappears when when it flies into the blip. The drone, by the way, is what we find out was the helicopter in episode 2. That's what that was. We thought it was an actual helicopter, but it was one of the sword drones. And
I love
then
that detail.
when Monica goes to investigate the force field and where this drone got pulled in, she sticks her hand out into it and gets totally sucked in.
I love this scene because you see that Jimmy Woo finally learned some close-up magic,
Mm-hmm.
which was so subtle and just I love his little tiny character developments. And I love that he's becoming a bigger player in the MCU because he's just delightful.
He's such a delightful little dingus, and I'm really glad that because like he was really I really did like his character in Ant-Man. He was kind of Paul Rudd's verbal punching bag, and kind of just took it. But he was just trying to do his job, and he was just kind of a sweet guy, and he was sympathetic. So seeing him in this context or getting to see more of him, I'm really happy to do that.
But it was also an unsettling scene, kind of just like uncanny valley with them talking to the two cops and them being like, Westview doesn't exist right outside the Westview sign.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, where are we? We're from Eastview, right outside the Westview sign.
Yeah, there's just this weird eeriness to it. And it's one of those things that kind of deepen the mystery, right? So now not only do we know that it's affecting the people who are ever in this, whatever it is, it's also affecting some people outside. It's not, you don't have to necessarily be within the radius of this thing to affect you. There's still ways that it can kind of cause that selective amnesia. They theorize that in the show that maybe it's because the people who aren't forgetting about it have no connection to the town. But I'm not sure because they mentioned that Jimmy Woo, he still remembers his witness in the town from the witness protect, and that's definitely like a personal connection. I'm the FBI agent assigned to keep you not dead.
He
So
doesn't
I
mention who the witness is, so
mhm.
we don't know like who it could be, which leads speculation to it maybe being Ralph, or someone in that town that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. I'm really trying to think of who it could be because when later on they're going through the pictures and identifying people, he never has a moment of like, oh, that's my witness, found him. Which
Right.
so it'll be really interested to see who or what that is, or who that is going to turn out to be. And I have some theories, but we'll kind of get into that later.
I like that the helicopter, what was essentially a toy helicopter, it was a drone in the real world with some cool Captain Marvel colors. And, there's also the numbers on the drone relating to comic book issues and the number on the car. A lot of Easter eggs. Like this show is just chock full of Easter eggs.
Mhm. And something I think is also interesting about that is because in the big all the theorizing that goes into this, little details and understanding the rules of how everything works is good to have. And now that we know that that was a drone and not a helicopter, we know that when things are transformed in there, they are transformed to things that are relatively the same size,
Yeah.
which I think just as we're kind of going to start seeing things kind of come in and out and start being like, oh, is this a real thing? Is this a sword thing? Is this, I think that'll kind of help establish some ground rules of if they, yeah, I think that's a little detail that's going to be helpful going forward in
Yeah.
figuring out this show.
And with that, I really and it makes sense because, if it was an actual helicopter that got shrunk down, it did pose a lot of questions, like, did Monica get ejected? It was just nice finally having that piece of the puzzle and being like, "Oh, it all makes sense." This is a
Mhm.
very I feel like a very rewatchable show because, like, the more you find out, the more you wanna go back and watch these previous episodes and be like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it's all there."
So, as after Monica disappears, that's when okay, now all of the government agencies are all over this thing. So we cut to our girl Darcy Lewis, who is a doctor now, no
Yes.
longer an intern, probably because it's been 12 years. But she kind of talks to some of the other people and finds out that they're from all different backgrounds, which gives her the conclusion that no one knows what it is that they're dealing with. So they're kind of throwing every smart person they can at it. While there, Darcy kind of bosses everyone around. She sets up her equipment and she's able to pick up on cosmic microwave background radiation and a little bit more than that. Another frequency, which she kind of identifies as something that can be viewed with an old TV. She
I
asks for
love
a
that.
coffee and is never given coffee, and it's a crime because she just solved this whole thing.
She deserves more. I like, no, this part was great. It's awesome. Just this is like the team up of background characters that I am all here for. We
Mhm.
all wanted more Darcy screen time, and now she is getting it. It's beautiful. With that, we find out that she was, in fact, the hand in the first episode that was monitoring what is being shown and broadcasted. And I just thought that was a great way to explain why it's a broadcast. Because if they're dealing with, radio waves and different frequencies, that's all something that Wanda can control. So I love that it was undecipherable until put with a TV, and then it just turned into this show.
Yeah. It was also kind of funny because we went into all of these government agents. Because we cut back to Tyler. He's with some of the other people he's brought in, and he's like, "What?" He's being a real kind of tool to everybody. He's like, "Why doesn't anyone have anything for me?" Blah. Because we don't know what this is, dude. We're trying to figure it out. But then to kind of hear the background laugh track and just everyone in the room having a moment of like, is she watching TV right now? Only for them to realize, oh no, that's two Avengers in there, and this is what's coming from that. This is what we're dealing with.
I love that it's the classic, like, while you're watching it. It's like a little callback to Avengers when Tony Stark was like, "That man is playing Galaga in
Yeah.
Shield headquarters," and he's like, "Is someone watching a sitcom really? Is this what we're paying you to do?" And it's like, "Nope, this is happening right now. This is life. This is
And now
Wanda's
that,
life."
yeah. And now that we kind of know where everyone are, now that they know that this is what it is, we kind of see the it's not like a montage, but it's kind of a list of things that they're doing. So on Tyler's side, he sends in another agent to go check things out. And Jimmy Woo's like, dude, we don't know. Like, we lost one to this thing. Do we really want to be sending another person in there before we know what we're dealing with? And he's like, that's fine. You must be fun at parties. Which, and I think it's also established Tyler Hayward's going to be like it's a trope I hate, and I get why, but it's a character type that, and it's a person that's real, are the I know everything that's going on, so I'm not going to listen to what anyone else has to say, and it's gonna. I think he's going to be kind of a more antagonistic character whose
Oh yeah.
actions and assumptions and what's going on is going to directly hinder everyone trying to do their job.
I'm for sure getting bad vibes from him, but also because Monica seems to trust him so much, now she's, involved in this, and it seems like he mansplains everyone. Like he cut Darcy off when she was trying to explain what's going on.
Mhm.
And he just he doesn't want to listen to anyone, so he sends the agent who, we were right, it was a hazmat suit in the real world that got transformed into the Wandavision world as a
Mhm.
beekeeper. And I
Yeah.
thought the cool thing was that the tether they were tied to also transformed to one of those like beaded jump ropes that I haven't seen in so long.
Yeah, that was I think that was also kind of a cool thing to way to establish that everything that remotely doesn't resemble what's going to happen in this world is getting transformed. We also see that meanwhile the agents who know how to do their job are identifying people through the TV show. They're rewatching, they say episodes of the TV show, which implies that there are more episodes that just we as our audience hasn't seen between
Mm.
the first episode, our 50s episode, and the second episode, our 60s episode. But we see them starting to identify people. We see them like matching people in this town to people who are in these sitcoms. And this is kind of where I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier, theorizing about who that witness is. So in the shot that we got of the board, there was kind of two standouts to me. And one was more when the trailer came out, and I think is a little bit less important. Dottie wasn't on the board, like just at
Mhm.
all. We had all the other kind of side characters that she'd been interacting with had been identified. That the one lady who Dottie was like, "You'll never sit on a committee again." They made a point in being like, "This is who this person is," and Herb and Phil and the Hearts. But Dottie was never identified. And that raised she's as a character has been raising a lot of red flags for me, especially because in all the characters who've had this kind of weird character break moment, hers was kind of the one that was a lot more confrontational and a lot more, I'm not going to pretend to be playing along with the sitcom. I'm going to straight up directly confront you about this, or had a little bit more of that energy. So the fact that we didn't see her on the board, and like maybe that it was a montage of finding people, so that just wasn't the important one to show. But it's still weird to me. It's still weird to me that we didn't get a confirmation of like, yes, she's a character in this show or in the town. She's a regular person in the town. Where we got that for every other person who's been seen except for Agnes. And Agnes was interesting because even though her picture was on the board, she had no identifying information at all
Mhm.
about her.
She did not have a, Jersey ID like the rest of them had. I mean,
Yeah,
my thoughts on
no,
Dottie are on par as well. I think that she's a little bit different than Agnes in the sense that she might be a little less aware of what's actually happening, but still powerful enough to kind of call out Wanda in a way that is like it doesn't make sense where or how. It's kind of like since we find out who Dottie's husband is, he's one of the people that gets identified, right?
mhm.
Um,
She was not.
exactly. So that's a little fishy. I feel like she was so clearly seen and so clearly had an interaction with Wanda that they would have picked her up if they were doing like a facial recognition thing, which they seem to do for everyone else.
Yeah.
And the fact that Agnes doesn't have identification just adds to that theory that maybe there is more than one person in there who's not supposed to be there.
So with Agnes, we kind of know or kind of get the feeling that everything she says has this double meaning, right? Like we know that in the episode 2, and she started out the thing with "It's the star of the show," and just all those moments like that. But when she introduces Dottie's for the first time, the line that she says is that her rose bushes bloom under threat of debt or death, implying that she has some sort of control over that.
absolutely a good point, and she mentions that everything in this town revolves around Dottie.
Mhm.
And, if Agnes knows more than she's letting on, that's not something that she would say willy-nilly.
Like, we've been talking about, like, theorizing, like, who some of these, like, bad guys are, but maybe that's, like, Dottie is a hidden identity for one of them. Like, maybe that's who she's gonna turn out to be, which I'm kind of thinking might be the case because there's a lot of red flags that are coming from her. So, we kind of cut to things to where Jimmy's on. He has a whole, like, whiteboard and, like, YouTube page of, like, asking questions, yeah, why
Mhm.
sitcoms was the one that cracked me up the most, but Jimmy Woo is kind of all of us who've been watching the show, really.
Yeah, he's a very good audience surrogate. But yeah, talking about hexagons, obviously hexagons were how the episodes ended. But it's also eventually what they find out the radius of the town and like where all this stuff is happening is. It's in the shape of a
Mhm.
hexagon, which I like the theory that it's literally them being hexed and put under a
Oh!
spell. I thought that was a cool little something that could be a detail. But also in with Tyler in his office, he also had stuff that wasn't exactly a hexagon in shape, but it was arranged in the shape of a hexagon, probably indicating that he is some sort of villain
Mhm.
and some
Also
sort of bad guy.
yeah. Also, the fact I do think that the fact that because we've been theorizing, and just the people who've been watching WandaVision have been theorizing around the hexagon, what that is. So, we kind of go to Darcy and Jimmy are watching the show. Jimmy's like, "Man, I wish we could contact them in there." And Darcy's like, "I got something we can try." And she mentions how in previous episodes she always washes a dish, which that was a standout line because now I really got to go back and see where she washes a dish in each episode because I feel like that's them telling us to look for something, right? But they go to try and contact them, and they are like, "Oh, no, she's at a party, but we can still trade the radio." Something I thought that was interesting about this was because in the show, they had that moment where "Help Me, Rhonda" was playing by the Beach Boys, and that moment was happening. But in this side of the same thing happened there, and it kind of occurred to me that we only hear "Help Me, Rhonda," the song, when he's trying to tune in and contact her, which tells me that it's not just, items and physical items that are being transformed when they enter through this reality. The transformation happened to his sound when he was trying to contact her. It changed into the Beach Boys, and a little bit was still able to leak through, but that establishes another rule of this universe that it's not just physical things that are being transformed here. Uh it's sound, it's light waves, it's all that.
That's a good catch. Yeah, that's something I didn't realize is that these aren't happening in the same like it's not happening in real time because a lot of the scene takes place. I mean, eventually when we see, later on in the episode when Geraldine does get ejected, she ends up being ejected out into nighttime, whereas she was with Wanda in the daytime.
Yeah. And that's kind of where the episode leads to next too, is it's what we didn't see in that episode 3 where Monica is helping Wanda give birth, and, like, they have that tense kind of confrontation, but now we get to see the rest of that. We, get to see exactly what Wanda did to, Gerald or Wanda did to Monica, which is after confronting her for a little bit, she yeets Geraldine out of the portal, just crashing
Oh,
through buildings. She looked so frightening while doing that. Can we talk about that?
absolutely. She went back to her, like, Age of Ultron swirling hands with the red energy. I loved that the aspect ratio changed as well, and it changed so obviously because it wasn't this perfect world that Wanda has. It's her breaking that reality, and she literally sends Geraldine through 4 walls. She breaks her through the 4th wall, which I thought was a cool little tidbit as well. Terrifying.
from there, Wanda looks at this destruction she caused and kinds a little bit shaken, and she kind of quickly warps everything back to the way it was. And we go back to that scene where it left off on the last episode, where Vision walks in and is like, "Hey, where's Geraldine?" And she's like, "Yeah, she left." But then when she turns around, we see dead Vision with half of his skull crushed in.
Oof, that was spooky.
I
It was
think
a
that
really effective jump scare.
Yeah, and I think that, really kind of confirmed what you were saying last week, Nala, that she just took Vision's body. I think that's what that
Mhm.
was.
Yeah, because Darcy mentions that he wasn't blipped, he was like legitimately killed. Killed by her first and then brought back in time and killed again, even more brutally. So I think that Wanda has just dealt with so much death and so much trauma that the only way she can cope with it is by creating this pocket reality, which I just think is so sad because Wanda deserves, she deserves happiness. She deserves so
Well
much better.
well, I do wonder because while this moment is happening, we see the sword agents just swarming Monica and just like making sure she's okay. And Monica reveals it's Wanda. It's all Wanda. But I'm wondering because we know that kind of leaves us in the same boat that we are in, that we were left in last episode, where we know that she has control of this reality and she wants it to be continuing. But is she the main force here? And it really, that moment I think was more of a red herring to like make us a little bit more assured, like, yes, Wanda is the big bad, but I still think there could be something else going on here. This easily could have been a some other villain, and Wanda's just taken advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I think Wanda's definitely not acting alone, because Vision is not only questioning Wanda, he's also questioning other people, specifically Agnes, because he noticed that when Herb was trying to explain what the situation is, Agnes did stop him. And Vision is starting to have kind of doubts on where he is, and maybe that something is, Wanda is being controlled, which is why he asks her to leave, like that they can get out of here, because he thinks Wanda's in danger and Wanda might just be working with other people. And like when she blasted Geraldine, she was kind of surprised at her powers, and like what she did. So that might, be an indication that she isn't working alone. Maybe she isn't aware of what she's doing. Someone might be playing on all of her grief and all of her trauma, and they might be controlling her in some way.
Mhm.
One little thing that was so, blink and you'll miss it, was they recreated the shot of what are we gonna watch tonight? And Vision turns on the TV and they look like they're watching the TV happily. But then you realize that Vision actually isn't watching the TV, he's looking directly at the camera. You can tell that he's looking at something else, being like, there is something wrong. We do need to get out of here, which I thought was very spooky because every time Vision gets close to finding out what is happening, something changes, something potentially horrific happens.
Yeah. And also he had that weird, like creepy, like forced smile when she walked away. Like he wasn't wanting to smile, but which was such just good facial acting on Paul Bettany's part.
Right, because like he was being made to think that everything was okay, but again, which is why that whole fact that he looked up into like directly into the camera is that pleading that you can only do so much when you're being controlled, and it has to be the slightest movements, because even you looking at Wanda saying, "What do you want to watch tonight?" super like kind of menacingly, he can't be like, "Uh-oh, there is shock on my face. This is unsettling," because she's controlling him and he has to smile through it.
So with this episode, there was no commercial, but we did establish that the commercials are seen in the Marvel universe where they're watching. So these
Mhm.
commercials, they aren't just for our audience entertainment. They are an established part of this weird broadcast that they are monitoring.
And these actors weren't brought up in the pages either. So
Yeah.
that could be because they're not actually people in the town, which again, I really do think that's their parents. But no one else knows what they look like because they're not people from the town. They're actually just representing things in Wanda's life.
Yeah, especially because that's just such a important part of how she got to where she is the traumatic death of her parents. So
Mhm.
that
And the
that makes
traumatic death of her brother and Vision. It looks like she's bringing back all these people that she's loved through this reality. Vision's super speed. He isn't known for being super fast, but he was able to run really fast, like Pietro. Like she's bringing in elements from her life.
Mhm. And then finally, we get our end credits, which was to "Voodoo Child" by Jimi Hendrix. That was our featured song of which it kind of broke from the here's a song from the 50s, here's a song from the 60s, and here's a song from the 70s, because it was kind of a filler episode. It was kind of a meanwhile in the human world. So I think they didn't really need to keep continuing with that progression. I think "Voodoo Child" by Jimi Hendrix was an amazing choice. It was also just I think a lot of us I know we here at this podcast all had a, "Well, this is what I'm listening to all week" moment.
Obviously, just the music is really important. And I do like your theory that not only are physical objects being transformed into this universe that Wanda's created, but sound is also being transformed because it can't break that reality. It
Mhm.
has to blend in with that reality somehow. So, because it's a very delicate fabric. So I think that's really cool. And of course, each song as it plays is literally describing each episode, each situation. And maybe that's part of the waves that are being transmitted. Maybe this is in kind of some way Wanda's like subconscious
Yeah.
playing these songs, like the person, the part of her that wants to break out and that knows that something is, wrong, is the one that's playing these songs. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And like this one definitely fits into the following of that Voodoo Child, the lyrics being about literally controlling and building the reality and the space around you. The first lyrics being stand next to the mountain, chop it down with the edge of my hand, pick up all the pieces and make an island and raise a little sand. Like,
It's also voodoo, like a voodoo doll is something that you can use to control someone else and,
mhm.
hurt other people. It is that it still has that witchcraft involved in it, which again, just a really great choice for songs.
Yeah. So ultimately, a really good episode. It answered some questions. It didn't really answer any big questions, but it did give us a little bit more world building and a little bit more little rules to kind of keep an eye out for. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it.
I did too. I have really liked the slow burn, the questions that you keep building up because, you you ask these questions every episode. It answers something, but then it leaves you something else to wonder. And now we have two things to wonder about. We have to wonder about, I like the way that this story is splitting because now we're going to see more of what's happening in reality, as well as what we're seeing happening to Wanda and her reality. And as the shows are, getting more modern and more up to date, more in line with what's happening in reality, I'm gonna love seeing that parallel play out more.
Mhm.
Well, I'm super excited for the next episode. It looks like we're going to be hitting the 80s and the 90s, and we're going to be going into, mockumentary style shows like The Office and Modern Family. And I'm very, very excited.
I really hope that the next few episodes are just full of Full House references. They have to, right?
Oh, they have to. I literally think she dresses up like what her sisters used to wear in Full House, which I think is a very cute homage. But it looks like the next episode is going to be more haunting. It looks like there's gonna be more of that reality breaking. Um, what I've seen in trailers, people crying, digital tears. It looks like they're trapped in their minds, and reality is slowly just becoming more and more warped as it's breaking down more.
Yeah, I think this
Um,
is gonna be the episode where Vision is really this is gonna be Vision's Truman Show, where he's really
mhm.
figuring out, "Ah, this is not correct. This is not good." And we know if it's the Halloween episode, we have that moment in the trailer where Agnes laughs at him, or she's like, "Am I dead?" And he's like, "Why?" And she's like, "'Cause you are," and starts laughing.
Mm.
So,
Ooh, I
I'm
forgot
really
about that part.
I've been so pumped for that scene, and I think this is we're hoping I'm hoping that this is where we start to get some villainous Catherine Hahn.
Well, tune in with us next episode as we continue our mission through this awesome, awesome new series.
Tell us what you thought of this episode or the last 3 in the comments, or send us an email at sirensdenpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Ty, our producer, and to Sean Thomas at buzzstudio.com for our theme song.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.